That's really cool, buddy. You want to guess what I'm excited about right now?
I got an idea.
That we are live on Facebook for the Not Your Average Investor Show Thursday edition, JWB Property of the Week.
Week.
I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. My co-host as always. I am tongue twisted today, man. I don't know what's going on here, buddy, but I know that they call you GC because you genuinely care and because your name is Gregg Cohen. Welcome, Gregg.
Thank you, buddy. I'm happy to be here. Great to be here with you all.
It's great to have you, man. It's great to have you. And it's great to have already 41 people on the call. This is incredible, man. Like I love the community that we have built around this show. Our regulars like Lee, like Mike and Matthew and Bill and Jake and everybody that's coming in. And if you haven't been here before, there's a little bit of housekeeping that we got going on. This is an interactive show, right? Like we want you to ask us questions. You are the star of this show, and Gregg is the brains, and I am kind of the guy that does a lot of this, and that's not a big deal, right? But for you to interact with us, I want you to pop open that chat button if you want to talk to us or to each other. And one key thing there is that the default only has you speaking with us. If you want to speak to each other, then put in drop that blue button and put panelists and attendees instead of just panelists. And that way everybody can see what you're saying. You get some kind of like what you're describing in the managers meeting. We get some really good crowd responses on this show, right? Because we have some, how do you say it? Refined, very educated real estate investors in the audience with us today. That is part of our clientele and our friends. And if you want me for sure to ask a question to Gregg on the show, the best thing you can do to help me out, because I tend to get a little cross-eyed with everything that's going on, is you pop open that Q&A button on the bottom right and pop your question in there. If you put it in the chat, I'm going to try to keep track of it. But as you can already see in the chat moves really, really quickly while the Q&A keeps it there for me to see. And last but not least, if you want to see the baseline business model of what JWB does, understand how to be an educated real estate investor, download the property evaluation kit that includes the sheet that we're going to be tinkering with today that you can use for your investments, go to jwbwebclass.com. I'll put it in the chat in a second. And if you want to get on a call with somebody from the team, go to chatwithjwb.com, and you're going to spend a fabulous half an hour to an hour with Courtney or with one of the mics. Super, super helpful people. I've been through it myself. It's a great experience. But speaking of great experiences, we're going to deliver one today, Gregg. And you know what? Before we even get into the property of the week, let's give the people what they want. Arath Herrera already coming in with a great question that I know you want to answer, man. And it is, Arath asks, can you do a 1031 with multiple properties? Sell my property in California, buy 5 or 6 single family homes in Florida. What do you got to say about that, Gregg?
Absolutely, Arath. That is absolutely possible. It's very common, especially for those investors that are in high-priced markets that have experienced significant growth like California. We have lots of clients that do exactly what you're talking about. And it's an incredibly savvy move, because many times the cash flow, the return on the investment that you try to get in California is just not there, right, for that property. And then you can transition that into positive cash flow investments in a growth market like Jacksonville. And then also a 1031 is a way to defer taxes. It's an incredible way for your assets to grow and not be hampered by taxes on the gains that you've made. So I love that idea. And yes, you can absolutely do it. I would encourage you to speak to my team. If you haven't spoken to my team already, we'll be able to help you with that for sure.
All right. That reminds me of a recent episode that we had with Jen Filzen and Renee Ariola, 2 California residents that number one, super cool people that are married to each other. They are dance instructors and partners in business, and they've been investing with you. I highly recommend you check out that episode for to meet your California brethren, Arath. And man, we got more questions, Gregg. I'm just gonna keep knocking out these questions, man. Medj Garcia, welcome back, Medj. Good to have you back. She asks, does JWB accept Section 8 tenants?
Yes, we do. And before I answer that, I just want to encourage everybody to fire the questions in. If you've been a part of these calls the last 2-3 weeks, we've been so blessed to have everybody on the call, but sometimes we just don't have time to get to all of the questions. So if you have a question you've been thinking about, go ahead and fire it in, use the Q&A box. Let's get as many of those answered as we can. Because Pablo and I, if we don't answer all the questions, we we feel bad afterwards. So fire those in. Do we accept Section 8 tenants? We do. We accept Section 8 tenants, but we only do it when we believe it's going to benefit you as the client. The Section 8 program sometimes gets a bad rap. Section 8 programs, for those who aren't aware, are where the government basically subsidizes all or a portion of your rent. And depending on which market you're in, it can be a well-run program or it cannot be a well-run program. Certain accountabilities may or may not be there between the residents who are on Section 8, depending on which market you're in. The market or the program here in Jacksonville is something that we actually believe in. It's a program that I have many homes that are rented to Section 8, especially over the years of owning all the rental properties over the years. But the challenge with Section 8 is it all comes down to a return on investment for you as an owner. There is a tremendous amount of red tape when it comes to Section 8. And so when we look at it is we say, is the red tape going to be worth it for you so that we're going to accept Section 8 for your home? For the vast majority of Section 8 vouchers, the rent amount is not high enough and the red tape is too high. The red tape is too much for us to believe that it's worth it to allow Section 8 for you. So for the vast majority of our homes, we do not. There are vouchers, specifically usually around larger bedroom homes, that we know those are going to be large voucher amounts. That means how much rent you can collect. And then in that case, the red tape, meaning maybe the extra 30 days of vacancy to get through the inspections and the clearing with the HUD counselor and all that good stuff, maybe that's worth it. So at the end of the day, we're going to make the best decision for you and your property as to whether or not we should accept it. It varies over time depending on how much red tape there is with Section 8 and the vouchers that we see. And so it is a small percentage of our inventory, but when it works, it can work. Percentage, I think it's less than 10% of our inventory is Section 8. But when it works, it can work really well.
Great question, Medj. I'm really surprised that in the 10 months that we've been doing this show, this is the first time we talk Section 8, right? So yeah, you learned something new. I just learned a bunch new, right? We got another great question. Matthew Pascalin or Pascalin. I hope I'm getting that right, Matthew.
Pascalin, I know Matthew very well. He's a current client.
Oh, there you go. So he, as a current client, asks, what kind of 30-year rate can you expect these days with a 25% down through one of the JWB preferred loan brokers?
It's a great question, Matthew. And I haven't seen you on the show. This might be the first time I've seen you on the show. So welcome. Thank you for being here. The rates right now are incredibly low, as I'm sure you're aware. For 25% down, we tell clients to expect a 4% interest rate on investment properties here in Florida, which is incredible. We've never, ever projected a 4% rate when it comes to your property evaluations. So it's an incredible buying opportunity.
It is indeed. Speaking of opportunities, I feel like everybody here is doing me a great favor, because if you don't know this, we repurpose some of these best questions into our social media streams and we share them with people so that we can answer these questions at scale. And if you ask questions this early in the show, it means that it's very easy for me to pick it out and share it. And that makes you, JWB, famous, just for the record, because we include your name and we give you a shout out. So we got one more. Ken asks, in a non-recourse financing situation, how is the money borrowed from an IRA repaid? Are there monthly payments back to the IRA?
Yes. So a couple of different things there. For non-recourse, that's a specific loan that you need to get if you're buying a property in your retirement accounts, in your IRAs or solo 401ks. Many people aren't familiar with this, but you can actually buy properties in an IRA. For example, you have to get a non-recourse loan if you want to get financing. So I think the question is like the logistics of how this works. Well, your IRA is the borrower. You work with a specific non-recourse lender, and JWB would set you up with a non-recourse lender. So you just have to reach out to my team. We'll get that whole relationship built for you. And then when the loan, of course, closes, the house is purchased by your IRA. The IRA then makes monthly payments to that non-recourse lender, just like Pablo. If you own your house, right, and you have a normal bank loan, let's call it with Bank of America, you make payments from Pablo's bank account to Bank of America. In this instance, this would be an IRA that owns the property, and from the IRA's bank account, those payments are then made to the non-recourse lender for you.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And Medj Garcia here in the chat puts she's currently getting 3.5% for her new purchase, which is sweet.
And that's incredible. It's we're always going to be conservative, but Medj is a current client. It's great to see her building her portfolio, and it can be lower.
All right, Greg, time to talk. Well, we got one more here. Nicole Cooper asks, then the rental income would go back into your IRA?
Yes, Nicole, thank you for asking and letting me clarify that. You make the payments on the loan from your IRA to the non-recourse lender. And in the same vein, all of the income from the rental property then goes directly back into your IRA, as well as any expenses that you have, right? If there are maintenance costs, whatever, it can't come from your personal bank account. It has to come from your IRA. That is incredibly important. And you've got to work with somebody that sets this up correctly. You have to work with a really great IRA custodian. You have to work with a great non-recourse lender. You have to work with a great property manager to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed so that you don't run into an issue of commingling funds that you shouldn't be doing.
All right. Well, we have, this was awesome. Like, I love the fact that we just ripped off a bunch of questions right to start the show. And now, Greg, you know what time it is, right? It's time for the JWB Property of the Week.
Week. We're going to Wilson Boulevard. Everybody get ready.
Yeah, hello, Mr. Wilson. 3700 Wilson Boulevard in the 32210 zip code. It's already rented. Comes with a $5,400 additional rent credit to buyer at closing. But you already knew that because that was in the description of the show today. And just anybody that's joining us live, we repurpose this into podcast, right? So I'm going to explain a couple things that are on the screen for you because we want to talk to our friend in the future that's listening to us in their eardrums right now. So it's a purchase price of $180,000, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom garage, 4-bed, 2-bathroom house.
Sounds like an incredible garage right there.
That's a great garage. That's a really good garage. And it's coming in at a really nice 9.32% return on investment based on conventional financing and $222 a month in cash flow. Greg, what can you tell us about this property here, my friend?
Well, first thing, for those who've been following the show for, let's say, a couple of months now, you might remember the name Wilson Boulevard. We've actually profiled other properties on Wilson Boulevard as the POTW or the property of the week. Just week. Hashtag the POT dubs as Pablo and I call it. So Wilson Boulevard, the biggest thing for your success is that you need to be investing with a team and a model that has worked over and over and over again. Wilson Boulevard is in the west side of Jacksonville. That's one of Jacksonville's 4 main neighborhoods. And it's out of all the streets that we've invested on, Wilson Boulevard might be the street that has the most JWB houses on it. Wilson Boulevard is a very long street, and I think there's probably 20 houses that are on Wilson Boulevard that folks have invested in with us here in Jacksonville. So it's a model, it's a neighborhood, it's an area that we know and love very well, and that leads to consistency. And the number one reason people are leaving the stock market is because, and coming to rental properties is because the variability gets them. They do not like the variability. They like consistency. So if you want to have a consistent performer in rental properties, go to a neighborhood, go to a model, go to a team that does something over and over again. That's what you see here with the house on Wilson Boulevard.
Greg, is it true that the WB in JWB stands for Wilson Boulevard? Is that what's going on?
Yes. No, somewhere in between there. I don't know.
It's just Wilson Boulevard Real Estate Capital. All right, Greg, we already got a question from Michael Parsons. He's asking, does your maintenance rate include CapEx?
It's a great question. So CapEx is another way of saying capital expenditures. And some investment firms out there delineate between maintenance cost and CapEx when they're putting their maintenance rate together. For simplicity's sake, for all of the expenses that we track, we combine it under maintenance rate. So whether that is CapEx, capital expenditure would be something like a roof going bad, and then you needing to replace a roof or a major mechanical system, right? That would be a capital expenditure, right? An example of what many people would just call regular maintenance costs would be, in a property turn, you have to replace a part of the flooring or repaint. That would be what some may call just a maintenance cost. For JWB, we track it all. We've tracked every dollar in and every dollar out. So we've included all of our regular maintenance costs and all of our capital expenditures. Since 2011, we've tracked this across all of the properties that have been purchased by our clients. There's over 2,000 turnkey properties that have been purchased. And that's how we get our maintenance rate expectations. So a simple answer is capital expenditures are included in this rate. And what we've been able to show is that for a renovated home, we're going to be able to perform at a 6% rate for insurance costs. That's 6% of the gross rents that are collected is what you should expect to give back in the form of maintenance / CapEx on a JWB property.
Okay, great. That's a great start to explain the rest of these numbers, right? So this 9.32%, what does that include?
So 9.32% is your return on investment for everything related to the cash flow of the house, everything related to the rental income. So your net rental income means the rent that you earn on the property minus all of the expenses, your principal, your interest, your taxes, meaning your property taxes, your property insurance costs, your property management fees, including tenant placement fees, and then your expected maintenance cost and vacancy cost. And maintenance is what we just described. So your net rental income basically takes into account all of the good stuff, the rental income minus all of the expenses, and you're left with that net percent. We then also add in the profit center of your tax savings, right? This is the money that you don't have to spend right now because you're getting great write-offs from rental properties. So we include that profit center, your tax savings. We also include your principal pay down. And when you take all of those things together and you take the returns from that, you divide it by the initial investment, that's how you'll get 9.32%. And we're always targeting 9% plus for the market here in Jacksonville. So anything 9% or above is a win for us based on what the current market is bearing here in Jacksonville.
Yeah, now that you say that, right? Like it wasn't too long ago that we were talking 7 to 9%, right? And now you're like 9% plus, just like
I know. And I was hesitant to do that, right? I was like, man, we have been 7 to 9% for like, I don't know, 5 years now.
It's been a minute. So what's going on? Why is it 9% plus now, Greg?
The interest rates that Matthew was asking about early on have a dramatic effect on positive cash flow. Because when you drop an interest rate from an expected interest rate of 4.5% or 5%, which is where it was, call it a year ago, and you drop it to 4%, it basically bumps up your return on investment from the cash flows up 2 points. That's how big of a deal the debt is right now. That's how big of a deal financing is right now. Just by that simple interest rate change, it made these evaluations go up 2 percentage points. And so because of that, instead of it being 7 to 9% expected returns, which we have many clients on our call right now. Matthew is a long-term client of JWB. I'm sure he remembers his evaluations being different back in the day. Well, for those who probably bought, a year ago or a year and a half ago, right, the return on investment expectations were actually lower many times than what they are today, simply because of how inexpensive the debt is. Nothing else changed in the assets. Purchase prices didn't change, rent rates didn't change, property taxes didn't change by and large, and insurance costs didn't change. It's simply the debt, which is why we talk so much about how financing can really help you grow your wealth because of the low interest rates that we have right now.
Yeah, that was a major aha moment when we had Richie on here, who's he's like a VP at one of our regional banks, and he was talking about this being like a once in a lifetime opportunity of seeing into the future of what I know that it mobilized me to do it, right? so I figured it's worth giving that little nugget out. Greg, I can't help but notice here that you got 0% here on the appreciation rate. I know that we've talked about this before, but for anybody joining us right now, can you talk through what's going on with that 0% appreciation?
Absolutely. So a lot of people come to Jacksonville and choose this market over other potential cash flow markets because of the fact that we're a growth market. And when I say that we're a growth market, what that really means is that over the long haul, appreciation rates in Jacksonville have shown to be higher than the national average. And appreciation rates in Jacksonville have shown to be a lot higher than comparable cash flow markets out there. We actually took 5 comparable cash flow markets out there. And if you compare the historical home price appreciation rate in Jacksonville compared to those 5 cash flow markets, we're 34% higher for home price appreciation here in Jacksonville than those other 5 markets. Those are Dallas, Birmingham, Memphis, Cleveland, and Kansas City.
Hmm.
All
I
right.
like how you said Cleveland with a little extra spite, but continue.
That's right. I'm a big Steelers fan, baby. Still enjoying the victory that we had over the Cleveland Browns 2 weeks ago, and a big game this week coming up for any of my Steeler fans.
You guys are
So,
doing well.
so why would, if I just told you that we appreciate at a rate that's much higher, right? Our historical home price appreciation rate is actually 4.3% per year on average. That's since 1991. Why on earth, Pablo, would we put 0% there for appreciation rate?
I'm just going to take a gander here, and I'm going to guess that it's because in order to count on that, you need to be in for a full market cycle, and you can't control that piece, but you can control every other piece of the return.
Absolutely. So the way home price appreciation works is that it is cyclical. And you can go back and look at the data in various markets. You can say, okay, well, what's the historically accurate average appreciation rate year over year? And you can go back and look in 10 to 20 year cross segments. And what you're going to find is that that same historical appreciation rate has been repeated, or it's very, very close. And so the same thing happens here for those clients that purchase today. Is what I'll tell you is that if you have a long-term outlook on this buy and hold asset, and you are in for a full market cycle, which is just generally known to be between 10 to 20 years or longer, then you can count on home price appreciation. However, I don't know if everybody is going to follow what I say for a long period of time. And I make the delineation because if you're not holding on for the long haul, if you're planning on buying a rental property and trying to sell in 3 years or 5 years or whatnot, I will not tell you to count on home price appreciation, because the data hasn't shown that every 3 or 5 years it performs like the historical average, right? The data shows long term. So the reason why we don't put that in right off the bat for our property evaluations is because I don't know if you're going to hold on to it that long. The other reason is because we like to underpromise and overdeliver. It's one of our core values here at JWB. And quite frankly, just throwing really large return on investment numbers, which Pablo, I think you're going to press the magic button here.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Here we go. Boom.
It feels a little uncomfortable to come out here and just talk about these really high numbers. So there's a part of that as well. But the bigger thing is I want to control what we can control. We can control your return on investment from the cash flows with a high degree of control there. And the market has shown to control within a high degree what your historical appreciation rate is going to be if you're in for the long haul. And that's why we only put that appreciation rate in there when clients really do stay that long.
So to catch up our friend that's listening on podcast right now for kicks and skittles, I put in that 4.3% appreciation rate. I hit enter, right? And by the way, this is the property eval that you can download at jwbwebclass.com. That took me a minute there.
I was going to chime in there. I didn't know if you needed some help there, buddy.
Barely made it. So, put it in, and our 9 points, I forget the original. I'm sure I can figure that out. Appreciation just kicked up, turbocharged to 24.96% appreciation. So given that we're holding on for a full market cycle, can you explain why this thing just basically more than doubled, Greg?
Absolutely. So again, we had a 9.3% return on investment when we expected 0% home price appreciation for conventionally financed property. We then call it 4% appreciation roughly, and the return on investment for conventionally financed purchase went up way higher than 4%. Why did that happen? Well, it came down to one of the most beautiful things about investing in rental properties is the leverage involved, right? This financing that I've talked about a few times here on the call today, and I talk about it as much as I can, is such a huge opportunity for you if you're investing in a growth market and you're in for the long haul. When you invest and you take out a loan, you might be putting down 20% or 25%. And then the bank is contributing the other 75 or 80%. But when the asset value goes up 4% a year, all of that return goes to you. So even though you only put 20% down or 25%, you get the 4% growth over the entire investment, which is huge. So to put some numbers to it, if you purchased a property that was $100,000, just to keep it simple, and that asset appreciated at 4% a year, after year one, you earned $4,000 of value. But if you only put down 25%, then you only put down $25,000. If you want to put this in your calculator right now on your phone, put 4,000 divided by 25,000. And what you're going to see is that's a 16% return on investment, because the return, the 4,000, is over what your initial investment is. And that's how you supercharge your return. So that's a 16% return just from the appreciation. And if you're looking on the evaluation right here, that's largely how we went from 9.3% to almost 25%. The secret is the leverage there.
The leverage, which is one of the beautiful things about this asset class that we often like to talk about, right, Greg? And I gotta, we got some clients in the house that are giving up some experiences in the chat here. Mike Parsons, right? I took an appreciation as a bonus. I look at appreciation as a bonus. If you get it, great. If you don't, you still are getting a solid return with 9.32% plus the tax laws give you additional benefits. And then Matthew Pascalin says, first house bought in 2014 for $115K. It is now $190K on Zillow today. Pretty sweet returns, man.
There you go. It's a nice bonus. And I agree. If you are investing in the short run, you should think of home price appreciation definitely as a nice bonus if it happens. It gets a little bit more something that you can count on the longer you extend your buy and hold horizon.
Okay. So we got a question here from Lee. He says, Lee Bishop says, Greg, I was talking to an investor and they had a turnover issue in Florida where there was mold and warped hardwood flooring after a tenant left after 5 years in the dwelling. I know JWB does not do hardwood flooring in their models, but mold can run high. Are you aware of any issues like this on turnover where the CapEx or maintenance is over 6% in the rate?
Well, I mean, we manage over 3,600 homes and we manage them in Florida where it's hot. And so mold is something that we constantly talk to our residents about how to avoid, because mold typically happens based on how that resident is living in that home more than anything. And so a lot of that comes down to training and making sure that they do the simple things to make sure that they don't increase mold. Like, for example, keeping your AC unit on, right? Some people think that if I just turn the AC unit off, that's going to be a good thing. But long-term, that can, obviously is one of the leading indicators or leading factors contributing to mold. So mold is a real thing. Your property manager needs to make sure that they know how to proactively try to avoid that. They need to know how to reinforce that often with their residents. And then they need to know how to take care of that if it happens. So certainly that is something that we have dealt with. We know how to deal with that. And, the great thing is that 6% number would take into account any of those costs for mold that have happened over the years. And that 6% cost takes into account any CapEx, any maintenance costs. It's all there. And so that's why we're confident that we're going to be able to hit that maintenance percentage, even if we have mold issues that we have to deal with.
Greg, before we move on, I got a couple great questions here, but talk to me about that 6% number and how it's different than other turnkey rental income providers or other real estate companies in the area.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this is great really for newer rental property investors or for savvy, experienced rental property investors. You probably all can relate to what I'm going to share here. It's really easy to put one of these property evaluations together. There's a number of other turnkey operations out there. And, our investor toolkit here, this property evaluation calculator is fantastic because it shows all of the profit centers that we've just talked about. Not every other one shows every profit center. But even if you didn't have all those profit centers on there, the nuts and bolts of how to put this together is not that hard, right? You're going to see other property evaluations that are going to have your return on investment from your net rental income. You're going to see the cash flow. It's not that hard to put it together. But because it's not that hard to put it together, investors focus a lot on what this evaluation says. And as a turnkey rental property and provider, it is very easy to change the numbers to make the returns look better. One of the ways that providers do this is by quoting extra low maintenance costs. And the other thing that they do is they don't really track what their maintenance costs are, right? Your maintenance costs are a reflection of that individual property manager and how well they renovated the home or built the home when you bought it, and how well they've managed that relationship with the resident. So it's a highly hyper micro, set of factors. It's all about that property manager. But what a lot of these other turnkey companies do is they take industry averages when it comes to maintenance costs and vacancy costs, and they just plug a number in there, and they're not real. If you ask them to show you the data that supports whatever maintenance percentage they have in there, they can't produce it because they'll say it's industry average. Well, I can tell you, industry average varies widely. So JWB, we take a different approach. We want this to be data-driven. And so that's why we tracked all of our maintenance costs since 2011 so that we could accurately give real expectations for property evaluations because we want to hit them. So, what you may find out there is that others will use different maintenance costs and different vacancy costs. Generally speaking, you'll see somewhere usually 5% for vacancy cost is very real, is what they'll use. And then they'll see 5% maybe for maintenance costs, maybe sometimes 7%, but usually people go down to 5%. And they do this because this is what industry average is, or what they heard from the next turnkey company down the road, and they all sort of adopt it. But I can share with you that most turnkey rental property companies get nowhere near close to 5%. And this is one reason why people, ultimately don't have a great experience when they buy rental properties. It's because maintenance costs and vacancy costs are higher than expected. And this is really the source of it. It's a lack of good data going in. They put it on the evaluation, they go low, the return expectations go high, and ultimately they can't hit them.
There you go. So if you want real data, do business with somebody that's done this 3,000 times in the same place. It's kind of the lesson there. All right. Peter's got a great question. Peter, welcome to the show. He asks, is there a reason why 25% down is used for the example? I am under the impression that 20% is the norm. Thanks.
Peter, this is a very timely question. I love what you're asking, and I'll make sure I answer that. But this is a perfect segue from the last point, right? So with JWB, we care about hitting your return requirements. We put the assumption that you're going to put 25% down. You can put 20% down. Many of our investors put 20% down when they buy their properties. But we want to be conservative because we care about showing up month 1, year 1, year 3, year 5, every year. We want to show up and hit our returns. So this is a great thing for us to try out, right? If we put 20% in this down payment under the financing assumptions, and we go and we see what the return on investment would be, it will be higher, right? It was, well, I don't remember what it was once we put the,
here we go.
Yeah.
It was 9.3. It was 9.3 without appreciation, and now with 20% down, it's 10.51.
So if we wanted to just juice the returns to put as high of a number as possible across all of our evaluations, we could just put 20% down. You absolutely can put 20% down, but we don't. Another thing to watch out for, Peter, is that many turnkey operations will not put closing costs in on their property evaluations. Pablo, if you wouldn't mind, just go over to that other tab you were on.
I will. I was just messing around with the appreciation there so everybody can see it. Other tab.
That one right there. So what we showed here is that if we put 20% down instead of 25, it would juice the returns from 9.3 to 10.5. Well, Pablo, go over to, you see, it looks like it's row 8, column L. It says estimated closing cost right there.
Row 8, column L, estimating closing costs.
Yeah, and this is great so everybody can kind of watch this. You can do this on our investor toolkit, this property evaluation. You can make these changes so you can kind of mess around with this. But go to that $4,500, Pablo, that we put in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's keep it at, there we go. Okay. We'll keep it at 20%. We're going to take away that $4,500. Just delete that out. All right, now let's go check out what the returns were. They were 10.5 before.
11.82%.
So just what I've shown you right here is 2.5 points that I could have created out of thin air just by putting the most aggressive financing terms out there. And this is really what you're seeing out there when you're making decisions to buy in other markets. If you compare apples to apples, most are incredibly aggressive on what they put in front of you. So as an educated rental property investor, understand how you compare apples to apples, because the only thing that matters is, what did we tell you we were going to do for you? What was your expected return on investment? And then how did we do? How did we show up? And that's what we care about.
That was awesome. Really timely done. By the way, I would like to say, I feel like we're totally in sync here with like manipulating the sheet while you're talking, right? Like, I feel like we are connected right now. Cindy Sin Morner asks, do you recommend annual inspections as preventative maintenance?
Great question. And I have an answer that may surprise you. So for many years we did this, and we really wondered what impact it would have to do annual inspections. We felt that it wasn't the best use of our resources to do this, but we said it makes sense if we could show that property turn costs would be decreased, right? Or if residents somehow were staying longer, but whatever it needed to do, it needed to show that there was going to be a return on the investment. But we said out there, there's a huge perception that this makes an impact to an out-of-state owner, but my business partners and I did not feel like that really helped. And we own over 300 rental properties. And so we said, how are we going to figure out if this is really impactful? Because in our minds, the amount of time that we could spend and resources from a company perspective to put it on home inspections, if we found something else that was going to move the needle more, we could put those resources somewhere else to really drive down cost and really improve return on investment. So we did a little experiment with all of our JWB homes that we own as a company, over 300 homes. For over a year, we did 0 inspections. We turned over every house and we did 0 inspections. We tracked what the property turn costs were for just our homes and compared that to every other client home that we did the inspections on. Thousands of client homes, over 300 JWB homes. And we tracked to see what the average property turn costs were. Guess what we found, Pablo?
I'm going to guess that the yearly inspection did not move the needle.
Didn't move the needle. So we feel like it's our job to do the best thing that we can do for your returns on investment. And sometimes we're going to do things that you might not think are the right things, right? But that's why you're investing with us, because we're the experts. We've done this so many times over and over and over again. And we said, well, let's take those resources that we had that were doing these inspections and let's put this in another place, right? One place that we put it in is we increased our available homes inspections, right? Available homes means that we get somebody in the home every single week when your home is on the market, right? Because JWB, even prior to COVID, we did a remote showing, a self-assisted showing. And if you have, maybe dozens of people that are walking through a home, right? They're not always going to leave it exactly the way it should, right? It might not always smell the right way that it should, right? You might have a bug that's on the floor because somebody brought it in, right? And so we increased our inspections on the available homes, and we saw that drive down our days on market tremendously, right? Right now, it's one of the reasons that we manage over 3,600 homes and we have over 98% occupancy. And we have a full-time staff member who is the available homes teammate. And that available homes teammate was not there when we had the home inspection teammate. So answer to your question is, we do not do annual inspections for owners. We haven't found that is going to move the needle and drive down costs. There are a lot of other things that we can do to keep costs low on the maintenance side. And I thought this was a pretty cool example of how to rearrange resources to drive overall returns to be better.
I love that that's a really good example. It was really eye-opening to me. Was it I don't know if it was the Melissa Gillespie call or another time that we were talking property management, where you spoke about the best way to get eyes on a property isn't to schedule something 2 weeks ahead. Oh no, it was Mike Stetson that told us this, right? it isn't to schedule something 2 weeks ahead so that all of a sudden your tenant knows that they can, put their pit bull at their aunt's house or whatever it is. That you leverage your contractors and you leverage your repair people and you train them to have eyes and look out for certain things and report back to you. So you have this like army of spies. That's a little harsh,
Yes.
but you
And,
know what
and
I'm
that's
saying.
and that's very real, right? We are in these same neighborhoods, just like I talked about. Wilson Boulevard is in the West Side. We're there all the time, right? So everybody in the field knows our homes, knows these neighborhoods, knows what's to look out for. And we also have protocols in place that when there's an issue and we need to get inside a home, we get inside the home. So it's not like we don't have any visibility into the home. It's just the simple act of scheduling an annual routine inspection found to be, there was just no correlation to driving a higher return. So that's the simple thing that we repurpose. The rest of this, we're going to make sure that we have, when we need to be in your home, we're going to make sure that we're there. And we're spying. That's probably not the right word, right? We've got people driving by, seeing, like, for example, if people are parking cars in the lawn, right? That's something that one of our contractors, one of our teammates who's in the field may see that. They let us know. We go ahead and we call that resident. We take care of that issue or whatnot. So we have eyes and ears where we need to have them. And we've just kind of repurposed a higher and better use of resources.
Reminds me of Lord Varys in Game of Thrones, where he has his little birds, right? Like, all right,
Yeah.
I'm getting too geeky. I've got, so I don't know if everybody noticed that I started biting my lips because I'm getting nervous because there's a bunch of questions coming in the chat and I don't want to lose track. If you put a question in the chat, if you can put it in the Q&A, it would really, really help me. But I'm gonna knock out one of the ones that was back here in the past, and it is, looking for it, Miguel Angel Sanudo, coming to us from Spain, we know, asks, in the average, how long does it take to have a home rented after purchasing?
Well, when you're buying this home, you should expect to be cash flow positive on day one. I mean, that's one of the reasons you're coming to JWB. If you go to another market, they probably have inventory issues. They probably have issues with renting out the homes as quickly. And ultimately, many times it takes you months to actually get cash flow positive because it takes you months to actually close on the home, maybe renovate the home, maybe build the home, and then find the resident and all that good stuff. JWB, you don't have to worry about that. You're going to be cash flow positive on day one.
That's excellent. Nicole Cooper asks, do you do hurricane prep if necessary?
Yes. So hurricane prep starts with the right insurance right off the bat. So during the process of you becoming a client, Nicole, when you go through property selection, you're going to be introduced to the other teammates that are necessary to make sure that this whole house buying process goes seamlessly for you. So one of those teammates is your insurance provider. We have an incredible relationship with Ritchie Insurance Group. Whitney has been on our show. Her husband, Rich, also has been on our show. They're also current clients. We love them dearly. And they are responsible for almost all of our client insurance needs, as well as being my own client insurance needs, or my own insurance needs. So we're going to make sure that you have the right insurance. When a storm comes to Jacksonville, our team mobilizes. We have hurricane prep that we talk about annually before hurricane season happens. Every part of the team has a responsibility to make sure that these investments are taken care of for our clients. It might be on the construction team, making sure that any construction items are either tied down or removed and not able to be blown away, right? There might be the property management team notifying our residents well in advance that storm is coming. Make sure you bring your belongings inside. And then during the storm, there's emergency service for us to be able to handle any phone calls that are coming in. And everybody on the team has a responsibility for this. Like, when I get the call, I'm picking up the phone call, right? We had a storm a few years ago and everybody works. After a hurricane, you have to service 3,600 people. So everybody relies on each other internally here to make sure that those residents are taken care of, so that they're taken care of for you. Post-storm, the best thing that we have are these relationships with our vendors where we are the number one priority because of our scale and our size and the amount of business that we drive to our subcontractors and our vendor base. We are the number one priority. So residents get their issues serviced much quicker than anybody else out there, of course, when it's safe to do so. And really, it's a well-coordinated effort, IT wise, right? We talked to our IT team. Hey, if we have to be remote, this was pre-COVID, how do we operate our business remotely, right? That was one of the reasons why we could seamlessly transition into COVID times and go remotely. It's because we prepared for this through hurricane prep. So yes, great question. It's something that you got to be prepared for. Natural disasters can happen, of course, anywhere in different forms. And in Florida, we have hurricanes. But through insurance and then proper preparation, you can make sure that your assets are protected.
And we get this question time to time, and I always feel obliged to give my perspective, having come from the construction world, having been a subcontractor for a very long time, having been a GC for a very long time. The scale at which JWB operates and the ongoing services that they have, number one, a construction arm, two, ongoing services across 3,000 properties that feed, the mouths of the contractors that need this work, makes a huge difference when everybody that wasn't a client is calling, the roofer to say, hey, I got this one little leak, right? Like when you are, and I'm not painting you in a bad light, but when you are giving services to the 8,000 pound gorilla, guess what? The 8,000 pound gorilla gets service first, right? Like we used to be a big hospital builder, and we had a big hospital system. When they said jump, we said how high, and we didn't ask, and we build it later, right? Like very different than the one-off builder or the property management company that does everything themselves. And then all of a sudden when something happens, they're calling a plumber that they've done work with a year ago or something like that, right?
Absolutely, man. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk real quick. Mike Parsons wants to know, how do you see all the available homes to purchase? Is that just go to chatwithjwb.com?
Yeah. Mike, I'd encourage you to go to chatwithjwb.com. There you can schedule a time to speak with my team. We'll go straight through the onboarding process with you. And that culminates with property selection. So we would love the opportunity to chat with you.
Yeah. And something that I learned from Mike Stetson that you and I haven't really touched on is the idea that these homes are like widgets to you, right? Like it's not really about the individual property that you're buying here. And again, I'm saying this because I've been through the process now very recently, and we're going to talk about some more about that later. But it's not really about the individual property as much as this business model. So it's not like an extra friction of like go to get on a phone call. It's just, you need to really understand the business model to understand why it isn't just about the property, which I don't know if you want to shed some light on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about the team. Really, it's the team and the model that we want to make sure that we are both aligned with. It is not about the property. If you love the property so much and you don't like the team, we're probably not going to be the best fit, because long-term, we're not going to be able to serve your needs, right? You're going to be hyper property focused. And for our team, right, we're going to create this. Well, the model has already been created. We're going to continue to feed this model for you. And it's going to work because it's worked for 2,000 clients ahead of you, and it will work for the next 2,000 clients. And so, and when we talked about home inspections before, right, there are some investors out there that doesn't make sense to them, right? But we've been able to deliver. We've seen what our returns on investment are. Our entire team is mobilized and focused on doing this. So we're going to make sure that we think the same way about it. You go to other ways of buying rental properties or real estate in general, they're going to fire properties at you left and right. Let's jump on the call. Hey, put your money down, buy this one before it's gone, right? Pablo, you can speak to this. Our process is going to be very different, right? We're going to have an introductory phone call, and we're going to want to understand, what got you excited about investing in Jacksonville, right? And then we're going to go through a client demo so you can live and feel what it's like to actually have your money invested with us for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And Pablo, maybe you can shed some light on the ultimate, property selection part of this, right? It's
yeah, Lee, it's funny. Lee says, but some investors are hell bent on a particular property. I know, Lee. So I was that guy 8 years ago when I first invested with JWB. And quite frankly, I still kick myself because I was living in Miami and I'm like, no, I want something I've been to Jacksonville. I think the only cool area is the beach. I want something by the beach. And I never ended up, I private lend, but I never ended up pulling the trigger on an investment property. And now I wish I had, right? We're talking about 7 years ago, do the math, 2013, I would have gotten a great deal, right? And now that I see these great deals happening I'm jumping on the interest rate deal now. Cause I don't, cause I'd feel ignorant if I didn't after 10 months of seeing behind the curtain here. But at the end of the day, yeah. So they'll talk you through the whole business model, what it all means. And then it really just felt like, oh, okay, well, this property will do, right? Because at the end of the day, everything is so similar. And what I was buying into, what I am buying into is just that ROI. It's just that cash flow based on the assumptions that I inherently trust due to the amount of data points that JWB has. So I don't know if that is what you were asking me, Greg. Little preview for Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, let's give tell them what we got coming up on Tuesday. I think that's a great segue.
Should we do that right now? All right. Cool. Real quick. Is this house available for purchase? Marilyn Cotterman wants to know.
So a lot of these homes are going to be available for purchase. What Pablo and I do is prepare a couple of days in advance. And when we were putting this together, this one I found out before coming on the show was actually already purchased. So as of right now, this home technically is already under contract. But for everybody who tunes in, most of the homes that we're going to be able to show to you guys are available. Sometimes, things do move quickly here, and they might not always be available. That's what this one is.
Yeah. So what we were alluding to before is that for anybody that's new here, I think the regulars know what my role here, right? I have a marketing company, and I am also a service provider for JWB. I'm also happen to be their biggest fan at this point. But I recently have decided to invest in my own rental income property through JWB. So Tuesday's show, we're going to flip the script. And I guess I'm going to be the guest on the Not Your Average Investor show, Greg.
I'm working on my PG acronym here for you. Don't worry. I'm going to be introducing you. You're going to be the brains of the operation. I like this, man. I'm going to have to work on just explaining the drop down though on the chat thing. That screws me up.
It's harder than it looks, Greg. Harder than it looks. But yeah, I'm schwitzing just thinking about being on the other side of this chair here. Do you have Greg? Do you have a little bit of extra time to go through kind of just like knock out these questions here?
Well, I do, and I wanted to make one more note there. I sounded kind of sad when we talked about how this property is no longer available. In light of what Pablo was just talking about, how we operate as the properties, while important, they are the widget of this. We do the same thing over and over again. So if this is something that you're interested in on the house on Wilson Boulevard, just because this one isn't available, we have another 5, 10, 15 properties that are very similar. That's why we stay in the same price points, the same returns on investment, the same neighborhood. So if this is something that you're interested in, would highly encourage you to reach out to my team. There will be a similar property in every way, shape, and form that would be available for you.
There you go. All right, Greg, let's knock these out. Lee Bishop asks, Greg, you said this one is rented, but it still says 2 or 3 years. He's talking about on the lease assumption. Do you know if this home is actually 3 years? I know JWB does multi-year rentals for investor benefits.
You know what? That's a great question too. So this one actually is shorter than 2 years on this one, which might surprise some of you, right? Let's talk through this, right? Pablo, when we were putting this amazing description together for the property of the week, highlighted something that nobody's asked about yet, which I'm kind of surprised about, right? We put it in the description and we led off talking about the buyer credit of $5,400, right? And all the properties of the week, we have never talked about buyer credits for clients. So let's talk about why that happens. And then this will dovetail very nicely into Lee's question about lease term. So when we acquire a property, sometimes there's a resident in place and the home does not need a lot of work. This happens to be what happened for this house on Wilson Boulevard. We bought the home. There's a resident in place, a great resident in place. And the worst thing that we could do for everybody involved is kick out a great resident when we could make a much better solution for everybody. And so in this case, when this happens, we are going to do something to make sure that we're doing right by you as an owner and right by the resident as well. In this case, this resident is renting a home for a dollar amount that's much less than the expected rent. And Pablo, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind bringing that property valuation back up?
I was just thinking about doing that, Greg. Here we go.
So this is pretty cool for you as an owner. So you see that lease 2 or 3 years, that's a standard. We say at least 2 or 3 years because all of our new leases signed are going to either be 2 or 3 years. And that lease amount of $1,275 is the monthly rent for the market rent. If you actually look at this home for the client who just purchased this home, the lease that that current resident has right now is lower. I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but I could figure it out because, well, I won't get into that. So it's lower. Okay. We'll figure it out together in a second. I'll walk you through the numbers.
Because math. Go ahead.
Because of math, right?
Yeah.
When that happens, what we do as a company, JWB, is we want to make sure we're going to perform and hit those expected returns of 9.3% for you. So what JWB does in that case is we take the difference between what market rent is and what the current rent is, and we credit that to our client who purchases this home. We do it for a period of 2 years. And so that's how that $5,400 rent credit is calculated. If anybody wants to do the math on it, $5,400 divided by 24. Let's see. I don't know if anybody has that. If they want to throw that in the chat there, that would be the difference each month of what market rent is versus what the current rent is. And so we give that rent credit to you at closing. $5,400 goes in and produces a positive return on investment for the client who owns this home. Now, I don't remember exactly when this current lease is up, but if this current lease is, I think it's definitely less than 2 years. It might be a year, something like that. In essence, if that resident, they're then going to need to jump up their rent at that point, right? And if that resident does not want to jump up their rent at that point, we would then put a new resident in place, and you would, of course, it would be marketed at market rent. So in essence, the client certainly could make out like a bandit here and be a big winner because they would get that $5,400 at closing, and then they also could get that market rent at a period less than 2 years.
There you go.
There's one other thing. Let's see if anybody else calls me out on it. What's with that, with what I just described there, what is a cost that somebody could incur if the resident moves out early before 2 years? Oh, Pablo, I see you raising your hand. What do you got?
Call me. Property turn.
Property turn cost. Yes. So we are not going to stick you with a property turn cost if a resident leaves because they were on a shorter term lease. JWB is thinking beyond this, again, because we're motivated by expected returns and then hitting those returns. So the agreement that we have with a client who purchases a property in this scenario is that JWB is going to cover the property turn cost of that initial property turn. And I know, Pablo, you know about this because the property that I'm sure we'll talk about on next week's call had a similar thing, right? This was exactly what happened. And so what did that do for you when you knew that JWB is going to cover the first turn for you?
I mean, it was a nice peace of mind knowing that I was getting taken care of proactively.
There you go.
You know, like it for as a, like at the end of the day, to me, it's like an illustration of a long-term alignment between the person I'm doing business with and myself.
Exactly. We're only going to win if you win. And the way that we define the win is, what was that expected return? How are we going to handle our business to make sure that we show up at a higher amount? That's what's going to make you happy. That's going to keep you coming back. That's what's going to help you tell your friends and family to come back, to buy with us, to invest with us, for you to continue to buy and whatnot. So that's how we can all win.
All right, let's keep winning. Louis Mange. Do I say Mange or Maine? Anyways,
there's always one friend on the show that you just butcher their last name every single show. So Louis, you're the lucky winner. I'm
so intimidated by it, right? Like I see the GNE and I think of like an enya in Spanish, but I don't know how to say it. It's like Maine. Anyways, Louis, welcome. He says, please explain that percentage of anything is worthless unless the value received is controlled. I have great faith in JWB after 2 years plus, and percentage of each line item is a value that JWB controls extremely well. I'm assuming he's talking about the percentage of your maintenance rates and your vacancy rates and your returns and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm a little confused as to the question. Are we talking about how do we get those percentages? Where do they come from? Or
I think so remembering this came in at 112, right? So I think that what Lewis is explaining is saying that your assumptions don't mean anything unless you know how to control it. And that
Yes.
and in his experience, that JWB has a lot of control points in place because you've met his expectations.
It's very fair. I want everybody to realize that across decisions you make beyond JWB, that any provider out there can put any percentage in there. You have to do the due diligence to make sure that whatever percentage they're putting there has thought and data to support it. Because unfortunately, not everybody lives up to that standard.
All right, there you go. Marilyn Cotterman from Homosassa, Florida.
Home of the manatees.
All right. She asks, Wilson Boulevard sounds like the home is on a busy street. Is it a busy street?
I love Marilyn and her involvement in the shows over the years. This is not on the part of Wilson Boulevard that is on a busy street. A different part of Wilson Boulevard is on a busy street, and we talked about why it can make a lot of sense to invest in properties on a busy street. This one's a different part of Wilson, so no, it's not.
Why don't you give us a little bit about why investing in a busy street isn't the same as buying a home in a busy street that you're going to live in?
Well, I mean, what you're looking at is your ability to deliver a return on investment. And so if you are renting a home that's on a busy street, there's going to be pros and cons to renting that home, right? The pros are that you're going to put a sign out there, you're going to do online advertising, and there are a lot more eyeballs that are going to see that home and potentially rent it, right? Would I rather have a home that's on a busy street, or would I rather have a home that's barely visible, tucked away in some cul-de-sac in some other way? Well, there's not a yes or a no answer. One is better than the other, but I can tell you that a lot more eyeballs are going to get on that busy road, and more eyeballs mean a greater chance of renting that home. So you're going to have more eyeballs. However, you're going to dissuade some people that otherwise may want to rent that home because it's on a busy street, right? If it's a family or they have pets and they're concerned about that pet, or young children or whatnot, it may not jive for them. So we've had a lot of success. I own properties on busy roads. I don't stay away from busy roads. Wilson Boulevard, I think, has 4 lanes on it. But I know the pros of it and I know the cons of it. What you need to do is to work with somebody who can set the appropriate rent amount for being on a busy road. And there's a little bit of a discount for rent for being on a busy road, but you set that rent amount, you get a tremendous amount of eyeballs, and then you find the right resident whose family lifestyle jives with it, and then it can be a great investment.
As a marketing nerd, I just got a quick question. Does being on a busy street and the eyeballs really increase the eyeballs as much when you have such a sophisticated funnel that fills people based on social media advertising like you guys have built out over the years?
Is that because you run our social media advertising is what we're talking about here?
I don't run that part, right? Like I don't, but I have met the team members that do, and I'm super, super impressed. So like, I'm just kind of asking, how much does that really tilt?
I was being kind of a punk to you there. Pablo runs our social presence on our what we call our turnkey side, but not on our rental home side. And he's right? The vast majority of our online advertising for rental homes marketing comes through online channels, right? Normal search engine optimization, being in a premium spot on some of those listing sites like Zillow and Hotpads and Trulia. And we have a tremendous Facebook presence. And that's where the vast majority of our leads come from. Outdoor signage it still drives leads for us. I don't want to diminish it. So that's really where it would be a smaller percentage of our overall lead flow would be higher if it's in a busy road. But it's not going to make it or break it as far as our ability to rent out homes either way.
That's kind of what I figured. I just happen to know the machine behind this machine, right? Like, and I know that you have like lines of people waiting to get into your homes, which is amazing. Yeah. All right. Marilyn has one more question. So at 20% down, what would be the approximate total due at closing? I said approximate wrong, but I am pulling this thing up to make it easy.
Let's look right there. All right. So at 20% down, if you go over to the right there, it tells you what your down payment is, $36,000, right? The way you get that is you take your purchase price of $180,000 times 20%. So your down payment is $36,000, but you do need to take into account your closing costs. Again, most people don't, but they're surprised. They shouldn't be. You have closing costs when you buy a house. So estimated closing costs are $4,500, and that brings your total initial investment to $40,500 for a 20% down payment.
There you go, Marilyn. To the cent. To the penny. I guess the cent would, maybe if you spell cent the wrong way, it sounds funny. All right. Peter asks, this may be asking too much, but do you have a Mac version on the Numbers app of this spreadsheet? Because it doesn't convert 100% when I open it. Thanks.
Huh.
You know, we got that?
No, I don't think we have that. That's,
You know, I was gonna mess with it, Peter. I haven't verified this yet, but I have a Mac also, and sometimes when I'm having issues with stuff, what I do is I upload the Excel sheet into Google Docs, and then Google Docs converts it for me. So I don't know if you've tried that or not, but that might work.
sounds very technical, and I'm glad that we have the brightest minds on it.
We're gonna have to talk to the CTO of JWB, Greg. Can you make an intro?
Unfortunately, yes, I can. That's me, by the way. I run our technology. But Peter, we'll get you what you need. If you can't find, if it doesn't work for whatever, just reach out to us. Go to chat with JWB. You can send an email to info@JWB Companies. Let us know how we can help.
Awesome. And last question, Carol Moaning asks, when someone is evicted, do you have a process to getting the unpaid rent?
We do. We have many processes that are going to help get the unpaid rent. Many people aren't aware that there's so many things you can do even before the final eviction of moving somebody out of the house that can really be to your benefit. Again, this is something that separates great property management companies from everybody else. It's something called a stipulation agreement. So there are many times when if a resident is not performing as described in a normal year, by the way, I'm not talking about right now with COVID because we have to do things a little bit different. But in a normal year, if somebody isn't paying the rent as described and they haven't communicated with us, then we're going to file the eviction. That is not the end all of our ability to collect the rent. And it's really not the end all of our relationship with that person, which it is for many property management companies. For us, we want to enter into what's called a stipulation agreement. Stipulation agreement basically says that the eviction process has been started, but a payment plan has been put in place. And if the resident handles the payment plan according to the dates and the amount of money that we agree on, then the eviction is halted at that moment. All right. But what it does for you as an owner is it starts the process, which is important. It makes sure that the resident understands that we're serious about this, and it gives them an opportunity to rectify the situation. Then when we see that play through, if they continue to miss, then of course we have to go through with the eviction. But roughly about half of stipulation agreements actually get paid back. And this is a great thing for an owner because they get paid back with the rent that was due, as well as an eviction fee. Because when you start the eviction, you have to pay basically about $500 to start the eviction. For a resident to get back into compliance, they then have to handle any eviction fees, the late rent, any late fees. All of that has to come back into appliance, and then it's a fresh slate with that resident. And for you as an owner, you are made whole. So that's something that is incredibly successful for our property management teams. The worst case scenario, if we have to go forward with the eviction, we have a collection company that we would refer your file to. I can tell you that I personally don't expect a lot of that. I don't believe in throwing quote unquote good money after bad money, meaning starting to spend a lot of money to try to collect a relatively small amount of money that you have a low percentage chance of collecting. So I think a better way to go into it is to know that evictions are going to happen. If you get into owning rental properties, the longer you are in and the more properties you own, the more of a certainty it will happen. And you need to understand what the cost ramifications are of that. And so everything, again, goes back to the percentages that we put on your property evaluation. The vacancy cost or the maintenance cost go into those maintenance percentages or vacancy percentages. And in this property here on Wilson Boulevard, it's 3% of the gross rents are what we expect for vacancy costs, and maintenance costs are 6% of the gross rents. So any evictions that have happened over the course of the 2,000 properties that we analyze have all been factored in there. And that's why we feel so confident that that's what you will see, and that's not assuming that you would collect a dime after the eviction happened.
There you go. Every answer. We got to every question today, Greg. We spent an hour and 15 minutes. We still have 38 people with us. That never gets lost on me. The fact that we had 40 plus people with us for the majority of the call, 38 people still with us now. The idea that you take an hour and 50 minutes out of your day to spend it with Gregg and I on a Thursday is a very gratifying experience. And it feels like we are providing value, and it feels great, man. So I just want to thank everybody for being here. If you want to download this sheet, go to jwbwebclass.com, look at the webinar, right? It explains the whole business model. If you want to take the next step and talk to the team and get a personalized answer, go to chatwithjwb.com. If you want to join us in between shows, come to our secret cool club that we call the JWB Facebook group. That's jwbfacebookgroup.com. We have over 1,800. I guess it's not a secret cool club, and we got 1,800 sophisticated investors in there, right?
There you go. We just crossed the 1,800 threshold. That was pretty cool.
Pretty cool, man. Pretty cool that we just started that thing in January, and we got 1,800 people in there. We got some press this week. We had press join us on Tuesday. They wrote an article about the Not Your Average Investor Show. It's been a big week, bro.
It's pretty cool to see our name in lights there on the Not Your Average Investor Show, right? These wins really mean something to Pablo and I. This was fun.
I mean, listen, dude, you're used to being on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Not that big a deal for you, but for this, for me to get a shout out on the Not Your Average Investor Show, I thought it was pretty remarkable.
The text I sent you was at like 1:00 in the morning, and I was like, dude, they linked to our podcast, you know?
That's
don't even play me off like that.
I was just humble bragging for you, Wall Street Journal guy. All right. So anyways, like we said, this is our Thursday show. Tuesdays, we do an interview of a client or a real estate expert. In this case, we're doing the former, right? Not a real estate expert. I guess we haven't really figured out the format here, Gregg. I don't know. Are you really going to interview me? Am I going to interview myself? Do I do the intro? Do you do the intro? I guess we got to figure that out.
I think it's best when we don't think about it ahead of time. We show up and we just let it rip. I mean, I think that's the plan.
All right, cool. So yeah. So anyways, I'm excited to tell, I'm happy to answer any questions of my decision-making process. And, at the end of the day, right, like I've been in this ecosystem for 10 months telling the story, and I decided to pull the trigger, right? So I'm happy to share everything that I've learned, what my personal situation is, how much money I'm putting into it, whatever people want to ask about. I hope to give as much value as our average guest out here, and that's a pretty high standard. But I would love to see our friends, our regulars here, like Bill and Marilyn and Leo and Lee and Mike and and Jake and all these folks, and anybody that joined us today for the first time. I would love to see you back again, and I'll leave it up to you, Gregg, to say goodbye to everybody.
I'm super excited. Thank you, Pablo, for sharing your experience with everybody. It's going to be really cool, because if there's anybody who is genuine, authentic, humble, and just ready to share, it's my man Pablo over there. So I appreciate you sharing that with everybody on Tuesday. I'm excited about it. And thank you to everybody who joined us today, especially, our older folks that have, older, that's probably not the right way to say it. Our seasoned veterans of the show. We appreciate everything that you do to make this community very strong. And I noticed we had some new names too. So it's really great to see some new names and faces. Hopefully you had a good time, and you'll continue to join us every Tuesday and every Thursday at 12:30 on the show.
I was laughing because Lee Bishop puts, I'm not going to miss the Pablo roast next week.
Yes, exactly. There will be some shots fired. I bet you.
All right. See you all next week. See you, Greg.
Thank you, everybody.